Sam, welcome to the Low Carb Hustle podcast. I'm so glad you're here, brother. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and like your history with flow ropes. What got you into this space? What got you interested in this? And like, can you tell us a little bit about flow ropes for someone who's never even heard of it before?
Yes, yeah. It's quite hard to describe without a visualization, but I'll try my best. In terms of me, I've been doing it for about 5 years. Picked it up at the start of lockdown, bit of a lockdown side project. And typically, when I was growing up, it was quite standard, kind of like football, rugby, tennis, nothing really alternative. But I found rope flow at a time where I was dealing with a lot of eczema, kind of like all over my body. And I was following certain health YouTubers, skin health coaches, looking for solutions. In one of their morning routines, I see him swinging this rope about, and I got a rope off eBay. It was not the right kind of rope. It was hard to learn with, but we modeled our way through, and basically just taught myself through like YouTube clips, a couple of courses here and there, and I kind of fell in love, to be honest, and it's really helped with the eczema and my overall sort of well-being as well. Yeah, it was a good find. Somewhat unlikely, but I'm glad I stumbled upon it.
Yeah, that's kind of was kind of my experience too. Not during lockdown, but just like looking for something a little bit different. I wanted something that was low impact that I could practice without really getting sore, beat up. That was
Mm.
going to be something like a way I could expend calories, just get some movement in. But I also just wanted to move my body in unique and interesting ways. And that's kind of what this seems like. So for anyone who's never seen this before, it's kind of like a mix between like a Tai Chi with like a martial art with like a jump rope and maybe a little bit of like yoga sprinkled on it. It's like, it's a very
Yeah, yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Would you
You've
agree
done
with
a
that? Or
better
am I
job.
missing?
No, you've done a better job than me, to be honest. It originated from jump rope. So the creator of rope flow, a guy called David Weck, um, I don't know if you've heard of him. He
Mhm.
invented the
I've written for him
principle.
actually. I've written for
Oh,
Weck,
really?
the Weck method. Yeah.
Oh, no way. Nice.
I
Yeah,
didn't know
crazy
he
guy.
invented it though. He's kind of a
Genius.
eccentric genius. Yeah.
Eccentric, charismatic. Yeah, he's an interesting dude. But he saw a guy called Buddy Lee doing jump rope, but he saw him jumping and then he saw all the moves he did to the side and the stuff he was doing where he wasn't jumping over the rope. He thought that looked cooler, so he started just doing that, and then it started from there, and he's kind of popularized it. Um, and Yeah, that's basically where it started from. And he calls it the Rosetta Stone of movement practices, because you've got this underhand, one way of swinging the rope, and you do this kind of figure eights, and it mimics locomotion and walking, and then you've got this overhand, which is the other direction, and it's mimicking kind of throwing patterns. So there's a lot of carryover from the movements you do in rope flow into general movement and also other sports as well. So if you're practicing rope flow, the likelihood is you're going to become well coordinated in a lot of other sports as well, which is quite a kind of, yeah, it's quite nice. You don't feel like you're training for anything, but it makes you better at most things physically.
Yeah. And that's what it seemed. That's what really attracted me to it was like,
Mm.
how do you, cause like, how do you move in these interesting patterns without necessarily having to like learn Tai Chi or do ballroom dancing or something along those lines? Plus it just looks so cool. Like you see people who are like nailing it. Like, I mean,
Uh-huh.
like I started following your account on Instagram and I was like, this guy is really good at rope flow. So
Thank
that
you.
was like that,
Yeah.
like that was like a big, like just looking athletic, looking like this like smooth, seamless movement was really like a
Mm.
very interesting aspect of it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Once you dive into it, you can it teaches you, right? So one of the main rope flow guys in England, he's called Tim Sheaf, Way of the Rope. He used to be quite big in the parkour scene, um, and his main rope is called the Golden Teacher, which I think he actually named after some magic mushrooms. But it has another meaning of the rope teaches you, right? So if you all have experienced this, Nate. If you do something wrong, you're going to get slapped. You're going to get hit. Hopefully, it's your leg. Sometimes it's your nuts, and that really hurts. I don't know if you've had that yet, but that's sort of great. You don't necessarily need a coach because the rope is going to tell you when you're doing it wrong.
That's fair. I still feel like
Mm.
I probably would benefit from having a coach because I'm getting to these points
It,
where I'm like,
yeah.
does the hand go over, under? Do I move it out, in? Like, what's my leg doing here?
Uh-huh.
So
It does
there's
help. It does
and
help, and
there's
it'll
only so
save
many
you a lot of
YouTube
time.
videos. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
that's very
Yeah.
cool. Talk to me a little bit about, like, you mentioned the underhand being like mimicking locomotion and walking, the
Hmm.
overhand mimicking some like of the throwing patterns, and I think I would even call it like put some like striking patterns in there as
Yeah, like
well.
striking. Hmm.
What are some of the other physical benefits that someone could expect to see from like starting a rope flow practice and beginning to learn these techniques?
Yeah. So I guess you mentioned earlier about the mobility. I mentioned these kind of figure of eight patterns. You're doing that with your arms. You're going to be doing it with your wrists, and you're kind of doing different moves. You're flicking between like internal rotation and external rotation on the shoulders, and because you're doing so many reps, like if you compare it to push-ups or something, for example, the average person can only do so many of them in a day. But with a rope, because it's so low impact, it's fairly low effort, you can get thousands of reps in, thousands of little micro movements, and it's low load, but you're doing so much that you're getting a lot of benefit. Um, so I think that's where it lies. It's like a very safe way to develop your mobility, get a bit of movement in that isn't going to be really intense. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the main benefits of rope flow compared to, I'm trying to separate benefits of rope flow from just benefits of exercise in general.
100%. And I think one of the main things I've noticed is opening up my shoulders. A lot of those moves
Mm,
require like full external rotation of the shoulders and the arms. So like when you're doing that, I feel like I'm getting a little bit of a stretch. And like you said, you're getting
mm-hmm,
a lot of reps of those without it being something super intense like push-ups or something where you're going to be developing overuse injuries if you have that same exact pattern. Plus, all the
mm-hmm,
patterns are just a little bit different. And one thing that I've always seen is that joints love circles. So like your wrists like
mm,
circles, your shoulders like circles, your hips like circles. So anytime you get a chance to
mm-hmm,
do more of like the circular motions and movement patterns with those joints, it helps like spread out the synovial fluid within the joints. So you have just a little bit better range of motion, a little bit smoother movements, and just everything feels healthier.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a good point. And I did a yoga teacher training a few months ago, and there was this technique that my yoga, one of the teachers was saying that she does every day, and she recommends everyone does it every day. And it was just going through all of your joints and just slowly doing these circles. And I feel like rope flow is just a funner way to do that, right? And it's going to engage your mind and take your focus a bit more than just sitting down and doing circles or something like that.
So
Yeah.
when you're not coaching rope flow, you work in mental health, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So what are some of like the mental benefits that you could expect to see from a rope flow practice? And like, would you even prescribe this to clients of yours?
Because I work in the NHS, I'm not really allowed to kind of recommend stuff that hasn't been evidenced. And because it's such a new thing, um, I don't. I wish I could, and I often almost do, but then I have to kind of stop myself. Um,
We'll put a like a asterisk on this and say he's not a doctor, but like if you were to and you had a
yeah.
platform, let's say like a podcast or something like that, what would you say?
I'd say that there are quite a few things, to be honest. One is the satisfaction and the a sense of achievement you get from learning something new is amazing. And with rope flow, what's interesting is pretty much everyone is physically capable of doing all of the moves, like all the kind of fancy stuff you see me doing. Everyone can do that. It's not like it takes a lot of strength. It's not like it takes a huge amount of mobility, but the way we're used to moving, it's like there's these kind of barriers or blocks in our brain. And doing rope flow, there's this continual breaking of patterns you're stuck in and making new connections, making new links and connecting the dots. And yeah, just that process of kind of breaking a barrier, working on something, getting it right, it really engages your mind. And that leads me on to the second point is if we think about flow state, which somewhat hard to define, but for me it's where you sort of forget. You don't forget where you are. You forget about everything else, and you are where you are. You're sort of fully engaged in the process of what you're doing, and because there's so many different things to try in rope flow, I feel like you can constantly find that flow state. I think that's probably part of why it got its name. And it means you don't have to think about the stresses of yesterday or tomorrow. You're just in the present. And I feel like anything that gets you there is going to be really helpful for kind of when you're feeling negative, when you're feeling anxious, when you're feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's like a movement meditative practice as well, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Like not only I feel like are you fully immersed in the present moment, but I think that, you know, I've had flashes of this. Really, I've only been practicing about like 5, 6 weeks, of the actually finding like myself in a state where I wasn't wondering or thinking about where I'm going to put my hands next or where I'm going to like, you know, move
Mm.
something around. I was just like doing it and it feels really good. And then I think about it for a second and I'm kind of fall out of that state. So, cause I'm just not, I don't haven't built the neural pathways, what you were mentioning
Mm-hmm.
earlier. But it's also amazing. Like there's this one move called is it the drag and roll or is it the dragon roll?
So it comes from the drag and roll because that's what you're doing with the rope. But the name of the move is the dragon roll.
Okay, that's much cooler. So I'm with
Yeah,
that.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but so like this is a move that's like it's like one of the probably like the what do you call it like the two or three most basic moves, kind of like the ones you have to learn to really progress.
Yeah. Yeah. The fundamentals. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's one of the fundamentals, and it took me forever to figure out how to get my hands to do the move. Right, like you were talking about, like I just had this block in my brain. It wasn't something I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do. It was absolutely like it's right there. But now that I can do it, and now that I've unlocked that, and I've kind of taken this neural pathway from this little just dirt road to more of like a 2 lane street, it's just so much more effortless. I could just do it. I could do it
Mm.
just standing around without even thinking about it. And I think that's a really fun thing to see. Like I'm someone who has like a bit of an addictive personality, and I love seeing progress. I love seeing like
Mm-hmm.
upward movement and just like how do I advance in any aspect of my life. So it's really fun to get those things where those unlocks where you're like, oh, I didn't have this yesterday and I have it today. That's such a
Yeah.
fun feeling for me, and that
Mm-hmm.
dopamine response of like keeps invigorating me to go forward with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that, and I think that's why I have kept with it and why I've stayed with it. I get kind of bored quite quickly, so if there isn't a new movement to unlock, I get a little bit bored doing the same thing. So I've kind of invested my energy going quite wide and learning loads of like tricks and the kind of fancy stuff. Um, you don't need to do that with rope flow. Like the fundamental patterns are going to give you most of the benefit, but it is just a question of that skill acquisition and that dopamine hit, like you said, that satisfaction of unlocking something new. I'm always looking for that, and I'm always searching for that because it's so nice. I wonder if you, yeah, do you find it frustrating at times when it feels right there but you can't get it?
Yeah, I'm finding this one move called the overhand sneak to be quite
Mm-hmm.
frustrating for me because I feel like I can get it, and then there's certain times I'm like, oh, that was smooth, and then I go do it again, and then now the rope's wrapped in my arms, or it hits me in the nuts, or like I get tangled up or something, and I'm like, I just had this, like why am I not doing it now? And like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's like that tension between like success and failure, where it's like, oh, if I just practice one more rep, if I just do one more time, if I can just get a little bit better, then I'm going to see that success. I'm going to see that like get that hit that I'm looking for,
Mm.
and that keeps me coming back. I feel like.
Yeah, it's good. I do feel like it's great for the people that like that challenge. But what I've noticed sometimes when you kind of introduce people to rope flow, especially when they're adults, because they've specialized, they're good at what they do, but no, they haven't been a beginner in ages, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't like sitting in that feeling of not being good at something, or maybe feeling like you look a bit stupid, and feeling that frustration. It isn't for them. So I feel like when you start rope flow, depending on your kind of like temperament and the way you approach challenges, it's frustrating because some people might be stuck on a move for a couple of weeks and then give up. And if they just push through, they got that first big unlock, they'd find it so satisfying, and then they'd be in, and then they'd be hooked. So that's what I worry about is people kind of, yeah, stopping because of that frustration and kind of denying themselves such a rich practice and a rich reward system if they kept going.
I think that applies to a lot of things, though. You know, like I just
Mm,
started doing jujitsu about 2 years ago. I got like the second belt, the blue belt, like a month
mm-hmm,
or two back, and like that, like the first 6 months of that were so painful physically and emotionally for me. Again, like my
Yeah.
ego was like barely handling just getting beat up. And I'm like, I've been in fitness for 20 years. I work out all the time. I'm pretty
Yeah.
strong. I'm getting beat up by like 140-pound 17-year-olds and women and guys who have been working at a desk for the last like 27 years, like,
Yeah.
and so like, but the sticking with it and like, and hitting those unlocks and being like, oh, I can do this now. Like for me and my temperament and my brain, that works really, really well.
Mm.
So I'm curious though, like when cause you coach people to do this as well and you don't have any availability for anyone. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I want Sam to coach me. Well, too bad. You can't.
Too bad, guys. Next year. Next year.
Maybe get on his wait list. Yeah. But how do you start people off in a way like of just the way you teach anything and like to help them feel successful? Can you lay out for me like what are the fundamental moves you're going to teach people, and how do you ensure that they have like a successful first or second session so that they stay with something like this?
Yeah. So I wouldn't try anything too hard the first couple of sessions. Sneaks would be a no go. You start with the underhand race and chase, which is just one beat on each side. Most people can do that straight away. And then the dragon roll is something that, depending on how they're doing with the underhand race and chase or the overhand race and chase, I might introduce a dragon roll in the first session, just because I don't know if you experienced this, but the underhand race and chase, everyone gets that quickly. And the dragon roll is the first thing that feels like an unlock. So if people can get a taste of that in their first session or in their second session, I feel like usually that's enough to kind of get them in, get them engaged, and keep them wanting more. Um, but there's a tendency of people to see what I do after 5 years of rope flow and come to the sessions and be like, teach me that thing, like that cool thing where you like let go and you twirl it around. And it's a difficult conversation, kind of negotiating that we're not going to do that because it's just going to frustrate you, and we haven't built the kind of the solid groundwork for you to be able to try that. So it's kind of knowing what is going to be at that right sweet spot of tricky but not too tricky that's going to be discouraging.
Are you working this into your like other workouts that you're doing? Are you doing this as a part of your morning routine? Are you do this when you feel stressed? Like what time of day are you hitting your rope flow for, like that's the most enjoyable and satisfying for you?
It's a good question, and it brings me on to another reason why I fell in love with it and why I stuck with it, is that I'm fundamentally quite a lazy person, and intense workouts, I've never been very consistent. But rope flow, because you're doing so many reps so quickly, all you need to maintain and progress is a few minutes a day. So that's why I initially did it so much. There's going to be times where I'll have a like mammoth session and do an hour or 2 hours. But for the most part, it's little pockets of like 5 minutes here, 10, 15 minutes there, in between appointments when I'm working from home, in the morning to kind of wake me up, before bed to kind of center me and calm me down.
Hmm.
That's why I love it. Is like you don't need to really carve out, I'm going to go to the gym and do this workout. You can mostly find a space to do it. I do it indoors a lot. I've broken a couple of things, but it's like it's worth it for the most part. Yeah, so I just sprinkle it here and there, and just little and often is what works for me.
I like that a lot. And I love the idea of like something not requiring you to have like a whole setup for skis and cold weather gear,
Mm.
or like a whole gym you have to drive to, or even like jujitsu, which doesn't require anything, but it does require a partner. So like it's something you can just grab this rope, go outside, do it inside, shoes on, shoes off, doesn't really matter, and bang out 5 minutes. One thing that I've been doing that I've really liked is because, okay, there's this Ayurvedic principle called Shatapavali, which just translates to like 100 steps. And the idea
Mm-hmm.
is that after each meal, you take 100 steps to help your digestive system, like improve your metabolism, nutrient partitioning, all these things. But the idea is just like move your body a little bit, get your muscles awake so that your muscles can start extracting the nutrients from the food you just ate. And I
Mm-hmm.
love this as a really low impact way of doing that rather than going on a walk. I feel like it's been really helpful for me. It's something to do that's like that feels good. And it
Yeah.
also, again, just like as someone who has been in the gym for a really long time, like it's not just this straight like frontal plane type of movement where you're just doing the same rep over and over again. There's so much side to side. There's so many unique muscles and little stabilizers that you're working that you
Hmm.
get a really great exercise and but without beating yourself up.
Yeah, yeah, it is so nice, and that's something I love about it as well. The kind of multi, you're working in so many planes, right? Whenever you're doing rope flow, it's not a unilateral movement. There's like side bending or coiling with every rep, and it feels quite sort of fluid. Um, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
I've used it as a morning thing, kind of like you said, to like wake me up. I have not done it before bedtime though. I'm gonna try that tonight, see how it goes.
Yeah, I quite like to just sort of close my eyes and just do a really basic move again and again before bed and just breathe through the nose and yeah, calms me down for sure.
And really turn it into like a meditative practice.
That's the thing. It can be whatever you want. So there might be times where I actually want to test my cardio. Not often. It happens maybe once a month. But so I'll go like really quick and do like underhand sneaks really quick as I can for like a minute. Usually triggers a mild asthma attack, which is maybe why I don't do it so often. But it can be indoors. I often focus on like the intricate skills, and then there's going to be times when I want to calm down, and it's more about going really slowly and like really focusing on one part of my body or turning it into a meditative practice. You can pick that. That's what I love about it. Depending on your mood and what you need it for, you can adapt the practice so it can fulfill so many different roles.
That's really cool. And I think that again, like when I think about like the majority of my clients are online. And when I'm programming workouts for them or like selecting exercises, I'm always trying to think of what is the highest return on investment? What's the best ROI I'm going to get from a workout that or
Mm-hmm.
exercise that is not does not have a ton of risk associated with it, but has like a good reward and payoff. And this just seems like it fits the bill for so many things. And yeah, you're not going to build enormous biceps from doing it, but it hits a lot of the things that I think people really need right now, which is like the meditative practice, almost a little bit of breath work, some mobility through the low back, the spine and the shoulders, and then just the ability to move laterally and just like have your hips be open, and have some like coordination and hand-eye and hand-foot coordination with like that patterning that you're building and creating new neural pathways. So there's so many positives. I don't really see any downsides aside from like the time it might take to actually become good at the fundamentals.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I wonder what you thought about it when you first saw someone doing it.
I was like, I want that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
like I saw it. I was like, that's cool as hell. Like, what? How do I jump on that?
Okay. Okay.
And I saw someone who
Because
was really good at jujitsu doing it, and I was like, oh, if he's good at
mhm.
jujitsu and he does this, maybe if I do that, I'll be better at jujitsu. So far, that's not worked. I'm still bad at jujitsu, but you know, willing to give it a shot.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I've just been doing it in public, I've had a lot of people not heckle me, but be like, aren't you going to jump over it? Or people not really understanding what the point of it is. And even my own brother, he was like, he told me the other month, he was like, when you started doing this, I thought like, that was really weird. Like you look strange. But, and this was at the point where I wasn't very good. So I didn't look that smooth. But now he kind of gets, he was like, okay, I get it now. Like you're pretty good. Um, yeah, I think it's difficult for people to understand like why you would do it as opposed to just working out or exercising normally.
Yeah, I feel like it's like same as Tai Chi though. Like that doesn't like that. You're
Mm.
doing that without any implements, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
but like, yeah, like you said, it is what you make it or what you need it to be in the moment. So, Sam, how would someone who's like interested in this, interested in some of the benefits that we talked about today, get started?
Hmm.
They've never done it before. They don't own a flow rope. What's their next step?
So you to just start with the first few patterns, you don't necessarily need a rope. You could use a resistance band. You could use a towel, like just something that's got a bit of length to swing side to side, just to get a bit of a taste for it. Um, Obviously, having an actual rope helps. You could just make your own. It's pretty simple. You could go on YouTube, look it up, get some rope. I sell ropes. I started selling them because I made them for myself because they're actually quite expensive, and then it just turned into a bit of a side hustle. But yeah, get something to flow with. It doesn't have to be a rope, but it is better if it is a flow rope.
And it
And
looks cooler
then
if it's a rope too.
it does look cooler, yeah. And then I'd join the Facebook community. There's like a rope flow community Facebook group, and there's a whole host of people on Instagram and on YouTube. There's like free tutorials. You can work your way through it, or you can pay for a course. I know this guy I mentioned, Tim Sheaf, Way of the Rope. He has a 2-month course which takes you from like absolute beginner to fluidity, basically. So there's quite a few options. Yeah.
And when is your course coming out?
2026, I think. Yeah,
Let's go.
pretty bogged down with uni stuff, but as soon as I submit my portfolio and drop down to part time, it's going to be full steam ahead with more rope flow stuff, which is exciting.
Awesome. And then if people want to follow you on Instagram, what's your handle?
Flow Ropes UK.
Awesome. And then hit Sam's website is flowropes.co.uk. If you want to grab one of his ropes, he's got 4 different types on there.
Yeah,
One
yeah.
is out of stock. You can't have that one.
One is out of stock. You can't have it for a couple of months because I don't have the money to buy that rope to make right now. So if some of you buy the other ropes, then maybe that'll come back in stock. I do deliver basically everywhere as well, so anyone can grab a rope. Yeah.
Awesome. Sam, this has been a lot of fun. I feel like really interesting like introduction to flow rope. And I know that we're just sitting here talking about it, and really you have to experience it by at least looking at it and watching it. So I would encourage you guys to go check out Sam's Instagram channel, look it up on YouTube. It's very cool, very engaging. It feels very like sporty. And again, you can just do it anywhere, bring it with you. It's really easy to pack. But before we jump today, anything you want to leave us with?
Yeah, there was one thing I did want to talk about, and it was, again, it's hard because it's so new. There's no real evidence for this, but I was talking to a guy the other day who has Parkinson's, and we were talking about just the beneficial effects for brain function. And he was saying like he couldn't properly swing his right arm. He was getting tremors all the time. And then he found rope flow. He's been doing it for about a year, significantly improved his symptoms. If he has a good rope flow session, the tremors stop. And yeah, he thinks the brain training behind, using both sides and breaking through those pathways is what has given him the most benefit. And he's moving like really smooth. Like you would not know that he had Parkinson's, and he's had it for quite a while. So that's, I think, going to be really interesting to see, hopefully, when someone does some research into rope flow and the potential benefits it has for the brain, we'll hopefully get some evidence. But for now, it's just anecdotal stuff. But there are a few of these really kind of inspiring stories popping up, which is it's going to be exciting.
That's super powerful. That's awesome. So if you've ever wanted to just improve your mobility, get a little bit more grounded, have a meditative practice that wasn't just sitting on a mat and doing nothing, you want to learn a new skill, you want to improve your mental capacity and increase your neural pathways, learn a new skill and just get smarter at something, then check out Flow Ropes, check out Sam's Flow Ropes UK on Instagram. And then if you need to grab a rope, get it from flowropes.co.uk. Sam, thank you again for being here, man. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much, mate. Cheers.